Huber's Orchard and Winery down in Starlight, Indiana, my old stomping grounds. Indiana, the Caravan returned there this year for the first time in three years. Mike Woodson's first trip down there, and he was welcomed with a sold-out audience. A lot of red in that room, man. I took a panoramic picture of it, and it was, I don't know if you got to see the photo I tweeted out, but I was like, that's a packed house, man. So a lot of people, and then afterwards they got to ask questions, and they asked a lot of the same questions that we do. The thing that they did not ask, and I was surprised because but they didn't ask about shooting, but they asked a lot of other things. But the one guy stood up, cracked me up, and said, Coach, everybody here loves you, and da-da-da. He goes, but these people down here want to play Kentucky. When is that going to happen? And it brought some laughter, but pretty fun. But that he talked about it then, and we've already addressed that. But it was a great time. Thanks to everybody at Huber's, by the way. Great venue. It's beautiful. It looks so beautiful. But then a lot of things that were said in the presser, Alec. And that's another thing about Mike Woodson. I love him for the fact of his openness. He is just open, and he's going to tell you pretty much the way it is. There are things he's not going to be able to tell you, like every coach, but he's as open a coach as Indiana has had ever as a basketball coach. I can't go back beyond the 60s, but I can say from 1971 forward, he is definitely the most approachable and open and honest coach that Indiana's had.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it was a breath of fresh air when he first came in, and his personality just kind of, took over the room, and the fact that I know you've been there in press conferences at times, or media availability that we've had with Coach Woodson, where he'll slip something in that maybe he wasn't supposed to or wasn't allowed to, and it's that's just part of it, and that's just part of the openness that he does have, and he tells you like it is, and you also know though when he's not going to expand on anything that either there's a good reason for it or we just don't need to know about it. And at the end of the day, he has a really good relationship with all of us. It's something that, we haven't had with prior head coaches. And part of that is just due to the openness. But we're also getting a much better look into kind of what systems, what schemes, what overall part of the program that he's really trying to take Indiana to. Whereas, previous coaches, the questions became very stale because we weren't getting any sort of answers on what they were trying to do or what the vision they had was. And I think that's the biggest difference with obviously Mike Woodson. And you see that, whether he's talking about Trace needing to shoot the ball more, whether he compared him a little bit to Carmelo and Amari Stoudemire with who he coached at, in the NBA with the Knicks, and kind of their skill set and what he's trying to take from them and bring to Trace. He talked about the 3-point shooting. He's been very open about that. Obviously very open about trying to get Kentucky and Louisville on the schedule, and just anything and everything from last year to adjusting to the college game, what he's learned, and obviously kind of what his visions and goals are for the next few years here. And that's obviously to get back to the top, much like Trace Jackson Davis said last week or on Monday, but to win a Big Ten championship. And he's doing all the right things to get there. Now it's about, really putting everything in place. And I think it was very interesting that he knows now things are going to have to get kind of sped up a little bit, whereas last year was a lot more of a learning curve. You don't have that this year, right? And Trace talked about it too. This is kind of the first time that you really go into a season for Indiana basketball in the last, maybe close to the last decade, right? And they have very, very high expectations, not only from inside the program, but outside the program and even nationally with what they're returning, how they finished off last year, and the pieces that they're bringing in as well. You kind of have all the pieces to the puzzle, which, and just like you said, I don't think they've had in some time, where they have almost every single piece covered. Obviously, the shooting is still kind of going to be that question mark. But at the end of the day, they have all the talent to compete for not only a Big Ten championship, but Sweet 16 and potentially a Final Four. Now they just have to put it together, but they can't have any of that outside noise really affect them, or else that would be obviously a very disappointing way to kind of end not only Trace Jackson Davis's career, but kind of derail this season again.
And this is just a gut feeling that this team is going to be one that has also something that no Indiana team has had at least in the last 6 years, and that's confidence. I think they're going to go into this season very confident in themselves, more confident in their coach because now they know him, more confident with the incoming players. The quality has been raised. The depth has been expanded. And I think that will take a little pressure. I've said this a couple times. Miller Kopp, he may end up having a decent season this year because he came in last year, and I don't know that he was expecting all that pressure that ended up being heaped on him because of the need. And maybe this season that's going to be dispersed a little more, which will relieve some of that pressure. And maybe that gives him an easier route, and maybe he finds some success this season. But I just have this gut feeling that this overall confidence is going to help them with their shooting.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Trace talked about it a little bit on Monday when we got to talk to him, was just the chemistry. The chemistry wasn't bad last year, but the chemistry on the floor took a very long time to develop because you brought in so many new pieces in addition to learning an entirely new system, and not just from a college coach, right? I mean, Mike Woodson was trying to adjust to the college game and put in systems and schemes that he thought would fit while tailoring it to the team that he had, which, let's be honest, was not the team that he really wanted. That's just obviously what he was kind of thrown into. Now he has his pieces. It's a full year of understanding defensively what to expect. And I think that's a big part in all of those players. But now what Trace was really kind of emphasizing was offensively how these guys move without the ball, where they're going to be. That's not something that just clicks overnight. And when you're trying to learn an entirely new system, that's something that really does not bring a lot of confidence to a lot of players if they expect someone to be in a certain area, but they're not used to their tendencies and they go somewhere else. And I think you brought up a good point with Miller Kopp, and I've said this multiple times. I think without Parker Stewart on the floor, Miller Kopp is going to have a much better season this year because he's going to be that one spot-up shooter who Indiana really needs. But when you have two spot-up shooters in addition to kind of a clogged paint, you're not going to be able to do much. And now that they know where Miller Kopp can move decently well off of the ball, it just wasn't shown and highlighted a ton last year. And that's one of those things where now you know where he's going to be, how he's going to utilize some of those off-ball screens. And that's something that I think a lot of these guards and big men, when they are looking for a spot-up shooter, are going to be able to utilize a lot more, kind of knowing those tendencies.